Our speaker today is Andre Copeland, who is the interpretive programs manager for the Chicago Zoological Society and Brookfield Zoo. I am sure that we will learn what that means in just a minute or two. But first, let's take a quick look at Andre's background. He is a 1985 graduate of Eastern Illinois University with a Bachelor of Arts degree. He has been the interpretive programs manager for the Chicago Zoological Society and Brookfield Zoo since February of 1999, a period of slightly over 23 years. Before that, he was at the Lincoln Park Zoo for 11 years. And along the way, he received certificates in interpretive planning, guide trainer, and master trainer in 2019. A few days ago, Andre sent me a message, and he said, you shouldn't expect that I'm going to bring any animals to the presentation. He didn't want to raise expectations or create a false impressions. But I was very hopeful that he might bring some animal, especially since just recently a new and rare baby antelope was born at the zoo. So I was looking all over this morning to see if the antelope was here. Unfortunately, it was not. So you know what? I'm going to have to go to the Brookfield Zoo if I want to see this beautiful new animal. Let's give a big welcome to Andre Copeland.
Excellent. What it means, me being an interpretive programs manager at Brookfield Zoo, is that I get to run my mouth a lot. Now, I'm not going to promise that I am going to be engaging, but everything behind me will be engaging. Also not going to promise that my failing memory is going to have all of these statistics right. So if I say anything wrong and you see something different up there, I want to make sure that you yell it out. So as introduced, I did start my animal career, my zoo career at Lincoln Park Zoo. I started off in animal care. And in 1999, I decided to do something that took my family by surprise. They knew that I loved working in animal care and coordinating the traveling zoo at Lincoln Park Zoo. And one day I came to them and said, I'm going to do it. And they said, what? I'm going to defect. So after tunneling up under the city, I decided to move over to Brookfield Zoo. And not because there was anything wrong with Lincoln Park Zoo. Quite the contrary, it is a beautiful organization that gave me a sound foundation. But something that lured me to Brookfield Zoo was what Brookfield Zoo did and stands for. Brookfield Zoo prides itself on inspiring conservation leadership. And they do that, we do that, by engaging people and communities with wildlife and nature. Now, a lot of people want to know, well, what is conservation leadership? Sounds great, but when we talk to people and we inspire people to be conservation leaders, we're hoping people will think about the environment, will think emotionally about what their choices mean to the environment. Now, the reason that we do this is because Brookfield Zoo was founded on a belief, and this is what really pulled me to Brookfield Zoo. The belief that we could live in harmony and sustainably with nature. A lot of people want to know where that belief was born. And that belief was born in the early 1900s by a very progressive Chicago person, a person who was forward-thinking enough to support the Chicago's first juvenile probation system. Person that was forward enough to think about starting the first opera house in Chicago. And after visiting Europe to help with the depression she was suffering from, Edith Rockefeller McCormick fell in love with a lot of zoos that she saw, especially in Zurich, who started to influence how people engaged with wildlife and nature by the architecture and the design. So in 1919, Edith Rockefeller McCormick came back to the United States and donated 83 acres of land to the forest preserves of Cook County, then known as the Cook County Forest Preserves. Cook County Forest Preserves wanted to help with that dream and included 98 acres of land. We started building. 1927, the first house went up, one that's near and dear to mine. I know it'll be near and dear to yours. Let's hear it if you love reptiles. That's right, all those things that slither and crawl with scales. Yes, that was the first house that went up. By 1933, we had enough housing for animals to be donated by the Getz family. And in 1934, Brookfield Zoo opened its gates to the public. It weathered a lot of storms. It weathered horrible economics, the Great War. Brookfield Zoo prided itself on perseverance and resilience because that's what Edith Rockefeller McCormick stood for. And after opening that, we now stand as an organization that is 235 acres. We are home to over 2,000 individual animals, representing over 400 species. And our organization has gone from what you saw in the past to this brightly colored living park that's habitat to native species today. But what does all that mean? Well, it means that our organization is founded on the grounds of animal care, welfare, and research. All sounds good, but I want to give you a look at what that comes together and means for the animals. We celebrate wildlife and nature, even with our animal residents. Take a look at how we celebrate Popcorn Day, International Popcorn Day. Great. Our animal enrichment program is extremely important because we believe in holistic welfare for our animals. Welfare that's based mind, body, as well as hope, soul. And so this is what animal care and welfare mean to us. We were the first zoo in the 20s, believe it or not. Okay, I have to come over here. To have our, well, I should say one of 3 zoos, to have our own veterinary hospital. And under the care and guidance of Dr. Satya, who you see right there to your left, holding that beautiful lizard, we work with up-and-coming vet students from the University of Illinois down in Champaign to help them do their residency. We cooperate with Shedd Aquarium, Lincoln Park Zoo, other zoos across the nation to ensure that not only our animals in professional care get the best care possible, but animals around the world. And a lot of this comes from our collaboration with scientists in the field, working with scientists on grounds. Our marine mammal program is one that people come to the zoo to hear about and to see. But a lot of people want to know, are your marine mammals healthy? Well, don't take my word for this. I want you to take a look at how we go about understanding what we need to do to care for marine mammals at Brookfield Zoo.
The cetacean welfare study was conducted to continuously improve our knowledge of welfare and our welfare assessment tools for whales and dolphins living in zoos and aquariums. There were 2 main goals of the study. The first goal was to develop healthy reference intervals and values that veterinarians and animal care staff can look at when assessing blood samples or hormone values for 4 different species of whales and dolphins. The second goal was to examine how habitat characteristics, environmental enrichment, and animal training are related to behavioral indicators of welfare for bottlenose dolphins. Animal care staff also trained the dolphins to wear a biologger device called an M-tag, which the dolphins could remove at any time. The M-tags gave us fantastic data about dolphins' activity levels and how they use their habitats. The dataset was collected from whales and dolphins over a 5-week period in 2018 and again in 2019. The biological samples, like the blood and the fecal samples, were collected by animal care staff and veterinarians using trained voluntary behaviors, meaning that the dolphins could choose if they wanted to provide the samples. One of our main findings from the study was that, for bottlenose dolphins, environmental enrichment programs and social management factors were more strongly related to behaviors likely indicative of positive welfare than habitat characteristics. The study also resulted in a new tool called Zoophysiotrack that can help cetacean managers in checking the health and welfare biomarkers of the animals and their care against the study's healthy population. 43 accredited zoos and aquariums in 7 countries were involved. This was the largest investigation of dolphin welfare to have ever been completed. The results from the study include data from 216 common and Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins, 13 beluga whales, and 8 Pacific white-sided dolphins.
We're very excited about the results of the cetacean welfare study as we're continuously looking for ways to improve our already robust welfare and enrichment programs to provide the best welfare for the dolphins that are in our care. Based upon the findings, we've implemented some changes to our already robust enrichment program. We've implemented new complex and challenging types of cognitive tasks and enrichment devices, along with a schedule of new and innovative enrichment that are added to our inventory regularly. A really great outcome of the cetacean welfare study is the invention of Zoophysiotrack. I can use this app to ensure that our dolphins are healthy and that their welfare biomarkers are within ranges provided by this study. And of course, this is in addition to our veterinary care and husbandry care programs that we have here at Seven Seas and Brookfield Zoo to ensure that our animals are thriving.
All right, so that is Rita. Rita actually is one of the first people I met when I started at the zoo. We've been working together for a long time. And as you see, they really pride themselves on making sure they understand a lot about the animals in their charge. And I included some of these videos because, as Don said, he was looking for me to bring the baby antelope, but wasn't able to do that. So I was hoping that I'd be able to give you all the chance to see some of these things that happen behind the scenes and through our eyes. Now, many of the things you saw in the past video reminded me of last doctor's checkup I had. And I had to go in. I remember some of those tubes, that type of thing, and came out with some good test results and realized that many of our scientists cooperate with doctors that work with humans. They consult on vision, they consult on digestive issues, and there have even been some things that we have done that have led to innovations in animal care. We were the first organization to work with orangutans who had diabetes to help the orangutans learn to voluntarily participate in their own care to get their much needed insulin injections. That training program went on to help people alter those techniques to work with marine mammals and other animals in zoos around the world. Now here you see our nutritionist. Jen Watts, right there on your left, makes sure that even though we know a lot about animals as species, that we remember each animal is an individual. Each animal's diet is specifically tailored to that individual, made at our commissary kitchen and delivered either on a daily or weekly basis, if you're talking about reptiles that may only eat once a week or so, right fresh from our kitchen. They all get food grade and food quality produce. And this is because we care deeply about the animals in our charge. And 2 animals represent this more than any other animals at the zoo. Have any of you ever heard of our 2 big bear brothers, Jim and Axie. I'm not quite sure how many people are familiar with Brookfield Zoo. Anybody out here familiar with Brookfield Zoo at all? And some of our stories, a few, okay. Have any of you heard about our bear brothers, Jim and Axie? Maybe birthday parties about them. Well, I am glad I brought this because this is a really cool story that not a lot of people know about. This is a story about two orphan cubs in Alaska that would have met their demise if not for people in U.S. Fish and Wildlife and two Brookfield zookeepers that intervened to save what are now two of our most beloved animals at Brookfield.
In July of 1995, two orphaned grizzly bears from Admiralty Island in Alaska were given a second chance at life. Their mother had been killed near a landfill in the small village of Angoon, and the cubs had little chance of surviving on their own. When residents learned of the cubs' fate, they notified the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and one of its officials asked the Chicago Zoological Society for assistance. After their rescue, the cubs were sent to Brookfield Zoo. The two brothers, who weighed just 80 pounds, spent several weeks in quarantine in the animal hospital to make sure they were healthy. They were then introduced to their new habitat where they quickly settled in. The bears were named Kootsnuwu Jim after the Tlingit name for Admiralty Island and one of the keepers who assisted in their rescue, and Angoon Axie after the Alaskan village and another keeper. Today, Jim and Axie weigh over 900 pounds and can be seen at the zoo's Great Bear Wilderness exhibit. They continue to receive excellent care from the animal care staff and nutritionists who provide them with enrichment and a well-balanced, nutritious diet. Millions of guests have seen the two brothers since their arrival at Brookfield Zoo 20 years ago. Their presence has brought awareness to the grizzly bear's plight and recovery in North America.
Jim and Axie have birthday parties once a year. People come and sign cards, but most of all, they help us remember that their wild counterparts need transition spaces between the great open spaces they live in, and that many of our wild creatures here need the ability to get from one area to another. So they help us engage the public in many different ways. Now, our animal care staff are professionals. They are guardians of the animals in our care. However, they evolve with us, as does society. And our charge forward into the future is primarily focused on these things: inspiring conservation leadership by engaging our communities in an effort to restore wildlife populations and people's connection with the environment. So what does that really mean? Well, what that really means is we engage people at the zoo, we engage people off grounds in many different ways, starting with things as small as a seed. So it's not just me that engages with people, but our ground staff, our horticulturists, to help people understand that all life is worth appreciating, and that these little things that sprout out of the ground make life for all of us possible. They're the things that provide our megafauna home, things that provide them food. If we give them a chance to care for them on ground and come back and see the fruits of their labor. So these are just some of the ways that we inspire people and we connect with people on grounds. Now, the people that you see behind the table there don't work at the zoo, but volunteer. Those are our Hamel Family Places volunteers, and our zoo would not be able to run without our volunteers. Our volunteer program started in 1971. And since then, it has helped us provide purpose for adults as well as youth. Our King Conservation Scholars volunteer their time at the zoo to engage people at exhibits or in the communities to help them connect with nature. When we engage with people, we want to make sure that we do it in a way that's barrier-free, in a way that connects with the community, and helps support their goals. So, a Zoo for All program being dedicated to autism awareness is very important to us. The zoo provides area for people to we have many hands-on experiences provided by many people at the zoo. These are the rich reasons to come to the zoo. There's a camera, areas at the zoo, because even those reptiles I talked about can bring a smile to people's eyes. Now, our volunteers also help us talk to people about some very important issues. And I know that Don was talking about the baby antelope. Now, I wasn't able to bring baby antelope, but one of the things that we are really focused on is restoring people's connection with wildlife and nature and restoring wild populations. So while I was not able to bring a baby antelope, I was able to bring you an inside look at some other ones that were born earlier this year.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Mike Adkisson, President and CEO of the Chicago Zoological Society, and I am here this morning with Raquel, one of our lead animal care specialists, and we are standing in front of Regenstein Wolf Woods, where we've just had an exciting morning with some of our new Mexican gray wolf pups. Had the chance to do some neonatal exams with our animal care staff and our veterinary team, doing a wellness checkup on some of these pups at their 6-week age point right now. So we looked at 2 pups this morning, but this litter started out actually having 5 pups in it. So tell us a little bit about where those other 3 pups went, Raquel.
So we had some pups born here at Brookfield Zoo at the end of April. This is a first litter for this pair here at Brookfield Zoo. And we actually sent 3 pups to the wild as part of a cross-foster program through the Mexican Wolf Recovery Program. So the genetics of these wolves in the wild are very important for the wild population, and one great way to introduce new wolves to the wild is to do so when they are very young by putting them into a den with wild puppies. So we were here bright and early in the morning to collect puppies out of the yard. So there's a lot that goes into it. Fish and Wildlife Service has to monitor the wolves in the wild and look for packs that are denning at the same time as our pack here at Brookfield. The Fish and Wildlife Service team there, the interagency field team, they are working to find the wild den at the same time we're starting kind of operations on the ground here. And we fly them to the release site, which is in Arizona and New Mexico. And when we get the pups there, they put our pups into the den in the wild, and they are then raised as wild wolves. So I got to go along with a vet tech because the puppies did have to be fed along the journey. But what the most meaningful part of the journey for me was seeing the habitat that the wolves live in and seeing how the livestock and the wolves really are in the exact same habitat, sharing the same space.
So really an incredible program and an example of where our animals here at Brookfield Zoo are making a real-world impact in the conservation of this endangered animal in the wild. And that Mexican gray wolf population in the wild right now is around about 200 animals or so, a very endangered population and one that there's a lot of conservation efforts going into. And when we think about that population and the threats facing it, one of the biggest threats facing that population is people and human activities. And talk to us a little bit about what that looks like and what that perceived threat around wolves is.
Yeah, so wolves and humans have a very interesting history here in the United States. This particular species, there were campaigns to actually eliminate them from the Southwest. And so there were bounties on their head and they were killed to almost extinction. In fact, they were extinct in the wild for a while. So the recovery program started with the passing of the Endangered Species Act to get this population back to the wild. And so zoos bred these animals and then started re-releasing them. And so obviously there's a lot of ranching in the Southwest where these guys live. And they do occasionally take cattle. The land that the recovery site is on is multi-use land, so it's owned by the government. So ranchers will lease out that land and they will graze their cattle on that land. So it's not their preferred choice of food, but they're in the same exact habitat, so sometimes they take livestock. So that's a big point of contention tension between ranchers and wolves, but also people are afraid of wolves. And it's not just in the Southwest, it's pretty much everywhere wolves live. And so there's this perceived threat that wolves are going to attack people, but it just doesn't really happen. And so since the Mexican wolf recovery program started, there has not been one documented case of a wolf attacking a human.
So difficult conditions in the wild for these animals, and that human-animal interaction is so tight on top of one another. And really, this is a conservation story that can only be successful if we're able to engage that human element and really make a meaningful message and change people's attitudes and mindsets towards these animals. The next.
Right. So just wanted to give you a chance to see some little ones, but this is a good, example of how our animal care, animal research, working with other organizations can lead to making sure a species stays around. If it weren't for the Mexican wolf recovery program, they would have gone extinct by now. But because of the good work and the dedication by our animal care professionals, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, other dedicated zoos, as Dr. Mike said, we have a population hovering around 200. So there is hope, and we are going to continue, and we are successful. We have a male who was cross-fostered in 2016 and a female that was cross-fostered in 2017 that are both currently breeding in separate packs in Arizona and New Mexico. So it does work, and we are going to continue to do this as we move forward. However, we also have a commitment to our marine mammals and to our school systems. So our Sarasota Dolphin Research Program, which is the longest running dolphin research program in the history of marine mammals, is where we start to get our information about how dolphins live, their resident populations, and how we can interact with dolphins. We can use this information to help us care better for our animals here. However, Dr. Randy Wells, as long as he studied dolphins in Sarasota Bay, where do you think the first place he ever saw a dolphin give birth was? That's right, with us, because we had the luxury of being able to see under the water with their habitat. So it's a great way to cross-share information. And one of the reasons that we do this is so that way we can work with our communities and we can start to engage them from a starting point that may be with seeds and work our way up. Our Zoo Adventure Passport program focuses on working with communities in Pilsen, Belmont, working with families to help them understand the nature in their area, how it connects to them, how it can be a central place, but also how we can bring wildlife back to an area while helping with their desires and their goals, such as working with Blue Island Library to tear up a piece of concrete in front of their library and plant a flourishing pollinator garden to help with monarch butterflies and other pollinators as they fly through that highly urbanized area. Brookfield, their library moved across the street and they wanted to do something other than have a giant concrete parking lot. So they built a huge pollinator garden that brought green space for people to come and sit, read about butterflies, and enjoy nature. And finally, our Naturally Neighbors and Home is Where the Heart Is programs, where we come out to organizations such as libraries or organizations like this and engage people with activities that start with life from a seed. We do things such as build ephemeral bird feeders for migratory birds that are flying through. We also make food for butterflies, get our hands dirty and make seed balls. And we have a budding lecture series in the fall and in the spring, usually every 2 weeks, on Tuesday or Wednesdays evenings on Zoom. We have a lecture about conservation initiatives, wildlife, and nature that are deeply connected to Brookfield Zoo. And I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to say that these are some ways that we may be able to help you. I know that you all are looking for programming. So whereas we can't always bring animals out, we can help you tune in to our lecture series, can come out with seeds, help feed butterflies, make some cool things that'll attract birds to your windows. And at the very least, just have fun being together. So with that, I'd like to say thank all of you for allowing me to run my mouth. Hopefully you enjoyed the videos and things behind me more than you enjoyed hearing me talk. I am happy to answer questions that I can, and wanted to leave this slide up for you all, just in case you wanted to know about some of our animal residents. So those are the gorillas, bison, dolphins, as well as Mexican wolves at the zoo. So thank you. Yes.
Oh, just 1 second. Can I ask the first question? Okay. Andrew, that was wonderful. And I'm sure we do have some questions. I was thinking about the wolves, the baby ones that you put in the wilderness. Do the adult wolves take to them right away? I mean, they don't reject them because they're not theirs, or how does that work?
No, the mothers actually will take to them right away, as long as, and that's why we keep human contact down to a minimum. So been greatly successful with the cross-fostering program, and I haven't heard of a situation where a mother and father have rejected cubs that have been fostered in.
That's great.
That was also my question, but I've got another one as well.
Sure.
I'm always thinking, when you replenish your animals, do you do it mainly from the wild, or do you do it by zoo sharing?
We do not want to take any animals from the wild unless there is a special situation where it's absolutely necessary. So we engage in breeding programs. There's a program called the Species Survival Program. A lot of people think about it as kind of like a dating service for animals. So we belong to the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and all the animals that we have and other accredited zoos have are kept in a database. This way we can take a look at their genes, where their genes have been represented, and then animals from one zoo can move to another zoo to participate in a breeding program. And this helps keep those genetic lines pure, and then also helps us maintain populations within the zoo so that we don't have to go to the wild for any animals. And then, as you've seen with Mexican wolves, things like Amur leopards, or in the past, Arabian oryx, we're able to help when populations crash by releasing animals to help bring those populations back. Oops, I'm sorry. I think I just ended up messing up our screen share. There we go.
Okay.
About 20 years ago, I was with some volunteers that built a garden near the old Monkey Island that was flooding in the pedestrian way. And I was at the zoo a few weeks ago, and the Monkey Island's gone. Tell me what happened.
Yes, Baboon Island, that was one of the fixtures. If you go down into our south gate and people were to start to head to the west end of our park, there was a big rock structure called Baboon Island. And it was one of the first exhibits that premiered at Brookfield Zoo and used to have baboons there. However, as time went on, things started to come in disrepair in Baboon Island. We took a look at what would be best. Would it be best to try to fix that for animals, or would it be best to put something else there and concentrate in our strategic plan on ways to make things better for the primates and tropic world? So the decision was that we're going to look at our strategic plan and focus on upgrading conditions for our animals at tropic world and think about ways to get them more enrichment. Over at where Baboon Island was, we wanted to help people understand our commitment to green spaces and bringing green spaces to people. So in that area, we built the Nature Plaza. Now, when it first premiered, people at the zoo were like, oh my goodness, what did you do? Because it looked like just a bunch of concrete and dirt. And that's because we were embarking upon a journey of when you start to plant native plants, especially pollinator plants. Sometimes you go on this 3-year process of ups and downs as these things take root. Well, now We have flourishing coneflowers. We have grasses there. We have this nature place for people to sit in and watch hummingbirds come, watch different pollinators, and we can start to tell that story of how we're connected to food through pollinators and how important green spaces are. And that space will be ephemeral and at times may start to change to help with our animal collection to provide them more space. So it's a way to, help provide some habitat on grounds for our native species, but then also have an ephemeral area that we can possibly use in the future.
Okay. I have another question.
Sure.
Do you have an exchange program with other countries like China and, rare animals that you might want to have in your zoo and then vice versa? Any kind of exchange?
Well, basically, there is a World Zoo Association, just like the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. If there was a need that arose from an accredited zoo that was someplace else in the world, then we would take a look at filling out the appropriate paperwork. We would have to take a look at that zoo's, ethics, what they believed in. And so we would have to make sure that everything fit the standards and criteria that we abide by, as well as the Association for Zoos and Aquariums. But that is something that would be considered, especially to save a species.
Great. And
Yes.
I have one more question before we talk to the Zoom people. The butterflies, what's their status? What am I thinking of here?
The monarch butterfly.
monarch.
We have a question about that.
Let me add to that, because the Zoom question from David is, I heard that monarch butterflies are becoming endangered. What causes this and what can be done to protect them? Do you have an answer to that one, Andre?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry about that. One of the things we love to talk about are the monarchs and pollinators. So the monarch butterfly was just designated as an endangered species by ICUN. And so that's the International Conservation Union of Endangered Species. So that designation helps people understand that these animals are in trouble. It's not designated as an endangered species by U.S. Fish and Wildlife yet. If that happens, that's when you start to see federal regulations come down. Now, the reason for the monarch butterflies decline, there are many reasons. One of the main reasons is the decline in milkweed in the monarch butterflies breeding areas. Monarch butterflies migrate from Mexico all the way up to the border of Canada and come back down to Mexico again. However, during this migration, you have 4 generations of butterflies that are born during this round trip. And so anywhere you have a break in this chain of milkweed, you could lose an entire generation of monarchs. And the most important corridor is the one that we're in, that comes right up through Illinois. So one of the things that people can do is, in addition to planting nectar-giving flowers, common milkweed is the most important thing to monarch butterflies, because milkweed is the only thing monarch caterpillars will eat. They will not eat anything else. So adults will sip nectar from other flowers, but female monarchs will only lay their eggs on milkweed. So if there's no milkweed, no more monarchs. And unfortunately, milkweed, with the name weed, you have a lot of ordinances against it. So sometimes when you get into housing divisions, certain municipalities will have an ordinance against weeds, which sometimes makes it hard for people to grow milkweed. So that's one of the things you can definitely touch base with us. And those are some of the programs we do, helping with pollinators, especially monarchs. So thank you for that question. I'd say milkweed is the most important, and that's how you can help monarchs out.
Very good. Rod, did you want to have questions from Zoom people?
Yes, we have several from Zoom. Rosalie is asking this question. Can you or our handlers recognize different apes and other animals by their facial features as we do with humans?
Absolutely. And believe it or not, our animal care professionals are masters at this. They can recognize great apes by different facial features. They can recognize snakes by different shape facial features. Our animal care professionals and researchers are so good, they can recognize a dolphin just by the fin that breaks the water. And I know that because I used to narrate the dolphin presentations and they told me I had to do it. And so I didn't believe them at first, but was able to get the hang of it. So yes, you can recognize that. And it's the powers of observation. And that shows you how much dedication our animal care professionals have. I doubt that I could recognize those differences now without spending a bit of time, but our animal care professionals can do it just like that. So I have another question. Which animal is the most dangerous to handlers? The way that we look at it is that any animal that you are in close contact with, because say, for example, big cats, it's always protected contact. There's always something between the animal care professional and the big cat to protect both of them. But any animal that you have to come in intimate contact with is something that could pose a dangerous situation to you. And when I say dangerous, don't always mean that something's going to get lopped off or anything, but even those small creatures, you get bitten by a ferret, stung by a little bug you're dealing with. I was holding a millipede before and they're vegetarians, and I guess my hand tasted like vegetable and it decided to take a taste. Didn't hurt, but it's like, hey, what's going on? So again, I'd say any animal that an animal care professional has to come directly in contact with is the one that has the most probability to be an unsafe situation. And this is why they go through so much training, so much care, so much observation, and always the animals determine what they want to do and whether or not they want to have any contact with a human care professional.
Okay, you talked to danger. What is the rarest animal in the zoo, and what might be the smartest animal in the zoo?
Well, the smartest, dare I say, no. So I'd say probably one of the rarest would be the Amur leopard. Populations tend to be estimated below about 60 animals in their natural environment. So Amur leopards are extremely endangered. However, we do have Micronesian kingfishers. We have Micronesian kingfishers that have decent populations in accredited organizations, but no wild populations right now because their wild populations crashed due to the introduction of the brown snake back, I believe it was during World War I or World War II, when the snakes got in landing gear of planes landing over there. So these give you an idea of a couple of animals that have really low populations, one that doesn't exist in the wild, but we're working on reintroductory efforts, but then another animal who is still living in the wild, but there may only be about 40 to 50 individuals left in the wild.
And the smartest, Andre?
Well, it all depends upon how you judge that. And some researchers judge that by taking a look at your brain and then taking a look at the folds on your cortex, because that's where we reason. That's where we form logic. And when you take a look at animals that have folds like ours, or bigger folds, more, you're looking at elephants, dolphins. And so some would argue that dolphins might be the smartest animals around. However, I was told years ago that bugs, like scorpions, can't think. I watched a group of scorpions build a ladder out of their bodies so one could climb out of a container. So I'm not quite sure. I just don't think we're smart enough to communicate with them, but something was going on. So I think that when we're talking about how smart an animal is, we often have to think about the situation, what type of intellect or creativity that animal needs to apply. And sometimes it may look different than what we're used to. And I think that at times we try to always classify being smart in human terms. And at times animals, I've seen them do things in a manner that I wish I would have thought of. So I think that we have a lot of animals out there that can do things and we don't know why as of yet. I think that people are now realizing how intelligent insects are. I have read that a colleague has actually been able to use the same type of training techniques used with mammals to train butterflies. Who knew? So I think that smart is a moving scale. And I think it's something that we are constantly amazed by, because we're constantly amazed to find out just what our wildlife counterparts are capable of.
Good answer, Andre. Another one from Diane. Do you attempt to breed endangered animals?
Yes, we absolutely do. Not to say that we can breed all endangered animals, but we do participate in breeding programs with endangered animals. So yes, absolutely. Some that come to mind are, say, for example, our pangolins. Pangolins are extremely endangered. We participate in breeding programs with them. Our rhinos. We've consistently participated in breeding programs with our rhinos. Our polar bears. So yes, we do participate in breeding programs with endangered animals.
A couple more. Karen is asking, and let me paraphrase it. How do you address their natural environment? In other words, how do you make it as close as possible, knowing that they're in a confined area?
Very good question. This is where a lot of the animal research and welfare research that you saw Dr. Lisa Lauderdale talking about comes into play. What we do is we take a look at the holistic lifestyle of an animal, not just where they live and how big the area is, but why they move through the area. What are the things that make the animals move? What are the indicators of positivity in the animals? And so that's what we look at. So for example, many, many years ago, people assumed that elephants were animals that only needed a large area of space. Whereas we've come to understand that the social bonds are most important with elephants, that those social indicators, especially the females having those bonds. And so these are the things that we take a look at. Is it an animal that should be kept with other animals, or is it a solitary species? And then we take a look at the environment. What are the light cycles in that environment? Does this animal like cover? Is the cover high or low? And so then the habitat is designed around that animal's needs, and so that that animal is as comfortable as possible. And then we take a look at diet, enrichment, so that we can simulate those things that the animal would encounter in its natural environment.
You're an excellent resource, Andre. Last question.
Thank you. Sure.
Is how much does it cost to visit the zoo, and how is the zoo funded?
The zoo has some operating funds that are given by the forest preserves of Cook County. Now, we do survive a lot on our gate revenue, and then we also have philanthropic donations as well. Right now, to get into the zoo, the ticket prices are about $24.95, but because I am here, I want you all to call me, because we're going to do something different about that. Because we want to make sure that you all can get out to the zoo. And so definitely I'm going to extend an invitation to you all through our Communities Nature program. I'm going to work with Don to see if we can get you into some of our lecture series, and then possibly come out and think about doing some Naturally Neighbors. So like I said, I know that you all have some dockets on the calendar to fill up, and people think that we're only about animals, but conservation cannot happen without people. And so I want everybody to understand that as much as we are about animals, we put people first. So.
Well, that was
Excellent, Andre. I'm going to turn it back to the auditorium.
Excellent.
Thanks, man. Good questions. And Andre, that's a wonderful offer. We'll look forward, because I was wondering if you hosted groups in my various organizations.
Oh, Don, your mic is off. People can.
Oh, let's see. Wait a minute. How's this? Does that help?
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay. I just have one last question. You sort of mentioned, well, you have dolphins, and you have, do you cooperate with the Shed Aquarium, for example, or in exchanging information? And I think you hinted at it, but you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, we do cooperate with the Shed Aquarium with cetacean welfare studies. For example, when we were looking at the video with Dr. Lisa Lauderdale, and she was talking about that apparatus that's kind of like a Fitbit that helps track dolphin movement and activity, some of the dolphins that you saw when she talked about the Pacific white-sided dolphins and the beluga whales were actually at Shedd Aquarium. So we do work closely with Shedd Aquarium. That's one of our sister organizations. I know that sometimes kind of people think about a friendly rivalry, but in reality, Shedd Aquarium, Lincoln Park Zoo, we work very closely with them. And, you know, we are all part of a big family that, again, wants to help wildlife and nature. Yeah.
Andre, I just want to say for everybody here and on Zoom, that was the most enlightening presentation. We can't thank you enough. Let's hear a big final applause.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate you having me.